Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. I'm so glad you're with us wherever you are. If you're joining us here on television in Santa Barbara, California, where we are, we welcome you. And of course, so many of you are joining us via goodlifetelevision.org from all around the world, and at our YouTube page and at the podcast and all these different great platforms we get to utilize to bring you some great people, some great stories, some inspiring moments, and we've had a little bit of everything over the last 3 years. Just we've been blessed with a lot of wonderful guests, from business entrepreneurs and public servants and athletes and young people and people with great journeys and great stories, and it's just great to bring them to you, and hopefully you're inspired, you're uplifted, you're encouraged by that, and we're grateful to have you. I'm really excited about my guests today. We have two. Dr. Melanie Mallers is with me, and Dr. Kate Bono is with me. They are welcome, first of all. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, wonderful to have you. They're down in at Cal State Fullerton, where they work. And so Dr. Mallers is an associate professor in the Department of Human Services and the master's in gerontology program at Cal State Fullerton. I could give you a lot on her bio. It's really interesting, and she's authored a textbook, an overview of the human services, and that we'll get into in a moment. Dr. Mallers has a PH.D. from the University of Arizona and other undergraduate degrees, and has done some great work in these areas that we're going to discuss in a moment. And Dr. Bono is department chair and professor in the Department of Child and Adolescent Studies at Cal State Fullerton, also founder and lead consultant for Brick Consulting. She received her doctorate in applied developmental psychology with specialized training in child development, community-based interventions, and program evaluation. So, and I love kind of last night and this morning being able to read about the work that you guys are doing and the passion with which you do it. We have the Turner Foundation that sponsors this program is very interested in children. We do a fair amount of work just through our apartment communities in dealing with helping children along as they grow and learn. And so let's start just maybe with a little bit of kind of your personal stories and backgrounds. Dr. Mallers, maybe we could start with you, kind of your journey, kind of where you came from, and kind of how you ended up having an interest in this work.
Okay. So I'm drawn to the helping profession, specifically looking at stress in children across the lifespan and how parent-child relationship quality impacts that experience for children, stress experience. Partly because I grew up with two wonderful parents, but they parented during a very different time than I'm rearing my children. And a lot of shame was surrounded our family. And so it just keyed me into how critical it is to invest in children and help them develop the resilience and the capacity that they need to thrive. And I've always just been a very curious person by nature. I'm a psychologist at heart and wanted to really understand the science of resilience and the science of how stress impacts our body.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And Dr. Bono, how about you?
So I always think it's funny to think about sort of the trajectory that gets you to where you are. When I was a little kid, I knew that I wanted to work with children, which is kind of weird because I was still a child myself. But I've always been drawn to working with children and thinking about children, and majored in psychology, and found out about the term resilience in my undergraduate days. And I had some family transitions growing up myself, and things weren't always smooth, and just wanted to learn more about what sort of leads children and people to be resilient over time, and what are some of the barriers to that. And so started studying that as a graduate student. Didn't really get into the stress part of that until I met Melanie. Melanie and I started working on stress research together. And then we learned about this Resilient Families program that was started at Santa Clara University, and really wanted to have the opportunity to get into the community, have our students work with community members and work with community partners to think about how we could promote resilience in young children. So it's been definitely a journey of wanting to be supportive in our communities for children and families, and also understand how stress sort of gets transmitted and how we can, be resilient over time.
One of the reasons I think Kate and I are both drawn to this is our, I guess, inherent abilities to empathize. Kate alluded to some turbulent experiences in her childhood, and I know my family of origin and myself struggled with incredible depression and anxiety, which just really brings us to this place where we're so in tune with our families, with our students, that we want to be able to help empower them, because we both have been given tremendous support throughout our lives to first achieve where we're at, but then be able to give back to the community, which is so dear to both of us.
And
Yeah,
I
love it.
think we also really wanted to teach our students how to do the same. So when we're working in the community, a lot of times we are involving students, or we're mentoring, people that are younger than us and just getting started in their careers for how to do this work, and really hoping to transmit, from a university perspective, the next generation of people that can go out into the community and do similar work. So we're really interested in doing it ourselves, and we're also interested in empowering those who come after us to continue the work.
If I could just add one more thing, we are so passionate about our students, but I don't think a lot of people recognize that many of our college students are food hungry, they're food insecure. COVID obviously was a particularly bad time for everyone, but we had students who were homeless, living in their cars, sitting in the McDonald's parking lot trying to get Wi-Fi, students who were choosing not to eat, or rent a place so that they could have tuition for their school. Our students in particular, because of our fields, are so committed to personal growth and empowerment, and so willing and open to share their stories, that they are the heroes, really, because now they're working in the community with families who are really struggling. I mean, a third of families report experiencing extreme distress. So we're really privileged to be able to work with such special people.
It's incredible. I love it. Yeah, we've discovered a little bit about the homeless 18 to 24 population where we live, and it's kind of a secret, because you don't see them out on pushing shopping carts, but they are in cars and they're on couches in there, and that's a huge issue that you're right. It's some people don't know about. So the fact that you're not only working with those young people, but then, encouraging them as they go on to help others, it's an amazing thing. It's, just talking about families. I mean, just in normal life, let's throw out COVID for a minute, and let's even put the impact of technology aside for a moment. The term dysfunctional family kind of implies that there are functional families. I kind of think they're all dysfunctional, and it's just a matter of degree. But I think understanding the impacts like you guys are doing and how it affects you and your well-being on a daily basis is incredible work just by itself. But then I was reading, this program you're doing with school districts. The program is called Building Resilient Families, where you're talking about the strong parent-child relationship, the executive function skills in children, and then stress reduction and management. Talk about working with the students, this 8-week program specifically, and what your vision is for that.
We have involved students in various capacities over the years. It got a little bit difficult during COVID because we're so limited in terms of how we could get students out into the community. But prior to that, when we worked with our families, we would work with them on a weekly basis, and students would come along and do a variety of things. So they might be sitting in the room and taking notes and not making observations about some of the things that went well, some of the things that were challenging. They might be providing childcare for children so that their parents could focus in the class that they were doing. And while they're doing that childcare, they're implementing some activities that we know help to build resilience in children. So they're doing that. They might be helping with the research aspect. So we collect data with our families before they start the program and then after they finish the program. So they might be helping collect that data and learning about, you know, how to do research like this, how to collect data, how to manage it, how to enter data, all of that. So they're really involved in every aspect of the program that we do. They also might help recruit families. And along the way, we're teaching them about what it means to do a community-based program. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the hurdles? They're meeting with us on a weekly basis so that we are, when we're talking about all of those things, they're learning like, oh, you have to think about childcare when you offer a program for parents, or how do you deal with food, and what about transportation, and you know, all of these logistic things that can really get in the way of making a successful program. And they're learning about the science behind resilience. One of the things that we're hoping to do in the near future is to have students that are working in one of our practicum fieldwork classes in their major, either their child and adolescent studies major or their human services major. Really, we're going to have, what we want to do is have them working in classrooms where they are actually implementing some of the resilience-based activities with some older children. So we typically have worked with younger children, and we would like to have them go out and work with these older children around thinking about how to cope with stress and how to be more resilient. And in the meantime, sort of a side effect of that, looking at the resilience development in the college students. So what are we going to see if they're learning about how to build resilience in children? Sort of like, oh, well, now you're learning too, you know, these things work for adults. They work for young adults, they work for older adults, they work for everyone. So we get really excited about being able to do different types of things with our students and see their growth as well as, you know, the growth in the families that we're working with.
Yeah. One of the reasons I think the Resilient Family Program is so unique is that not only do we work directly with parents, we work directly with children, obviously our students, but we're also including the school teachers. And that really creates a synergistic effect where there's continuity for the children. The other thing is parents who participate, their children obviously are participating, but if their children in the classrooms, their parents are not, all the children are getting the benefit of our program. So that gives me chills, because the reason we evaluate or we collect data is to know if the program's working, of course, but it's also to continue to get funding, which allows us then to evolve the program. And we've been really lucky to get some great funding. We have implemented at local school districts, but we primarily have worked with Head Start, which is a federal program to help support families who are at risk or living in poverty. And the reason that is so important is poverty is probably the biggest predictor of well-being outcomes for children, specifically school readiness, which is also a significant precursor to lifelong achievement, whether or not you're involved in criminal activity, child abuse, et cetera. So we're taking a preventative approach by working with little children, but we're also able, by working with older children, and hopefully moving into, you know, teenagers, we're taking more of a what we call secondary or tertiary level of intervention. So we're trying to hit it globally.
Yeah, so powerful. Do you have any specific families that you could talk about as we think about this?
Yeah, one that stands out to me was a woman who sat in the back of class when we led these sessions, and always had her sweatshirt hoodie over her and always just looked down. And the facilitators are trained to do a lot of interactive dialogue, to affirm experiences, to take their personal stories and help them to apply the Resilient Family Program concepts, and to guide and support without judgment, without shame. And this woman never said a word. She never made eye contact. And, you know, I was the implementer for this, and of course, feeling insecure. Am I not connecting with her? Have I not created a sense of trust? And the last day, and it gives me chills, and I may actually cry because I am an overly emotional person. But the last day, she came in about 15 minutes into the program. She took, you know, her hoodie off. She looked up, she made eye contact, and said that the program changed her world.
Mm.
And yes, the program is wonderful, but this is about her willingness to be vulnerable, to grow, to change, and said that she has been a parent who has hit her children, a parent who has neglected her children, a parent who has really just tried to disengage from life because it's really hard. And she said this program sparked in her a light and a joy. She is now going to church with her children. She is very present and mindful about how important the relationship is with children, and how, because parent-child relationship quality is really one of the key foundations for how children develop their brains and how they cope with stress. But she also forgave herself for the trauma she inflicted on her children and herself, and really focused in on a concept we talk about, which is repair work, because it's never too late to repair a relationship. And the fact that she was willing to step outside her comfort zone, to challenge the way she was brought up as a child, which had a lot of abuse and alcoholism, and decide to define herself as her own person, is really remarkable. I mean, that takes a lot of bravery. And that's why we do this.
I just, a lot of parenting programs focus on specific behaviors. Like, this is how you get your kids to do this thing. This is how you get your kids to do well in school, or to be potty trained, or whatever the situation is. And our program is really focused on building parents up, helping them to build themselves up so that they can have those relationships with their children, and also to change their mindset of what their job is as the parent. We talk to them about the importance of this relationship that they have with their children, and we help them to think about what are the things, the characteristics that they want to build in their children over time, and how do their behaviors then relate to those things. And we also talk about experiencing joy when you're parenting. You know, that parenting is really hard, and there's a lot of moments, Melanie and I know for sure, you know, we're both moms, that there are a lot of moments that are not joyful. But if we can capitalize and remember and think about the moments that are, and pay attention to those, it helps to get us through those moments that are more difficult. So it's really a mindset shift. And I think this parent that Melanie was just talking about really illustrates that so nicely, that it wasn't about getting her to learn how to do a specific parenting strategy. It's about changing the way she thinks about herself as a parent.
And also how parents and adults think about children. One of the things we talk about in the program is related to a concept called attributions, which is, maybe I'm getting too academic, but it's powerful. It's how we interpret other people's behaviors. And based on how we interpret that, it then creates an emotional reaction. So for example, if we think our child is not putting his or her shoes on because they're intentionally being defiant, we're going to feel anger, and then we're going to want to retaliate. We're going to want to react harshly. We're late, we got to get the kids to school, got to get to work. But if we're able to take a step back and attribute it to, my child doesn't know how to tie his shoes, he hasn't really been taught, but maybe we assume, well, he's 6, he should know, or that the child is nervous about something, or the child is just not paying attention, because that's what children do at that age. But it's an opportunity to check in with, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? How can I reassess this? And how can I later build a dialogue with my child to explain that, there's certain things we have to follow each day. And it's about building communication patterns. And we work with the parents and the children to learn how to communicate, even when our children are young. One of the things that stands out to me that Kate taught me, because she's the child and adolescent expert, I'm the stress researcher, but she shared a stat, and Kate, you can clarify, that the majority of language that parents engage with their children are directives, correct?
Yes. When we look at, this is one of the things that varies quite a bit by education and income status with families that are, when children are from families that tend to live in poverty, they hear many fewer words. And when you hear many fewer words, or when you are speaking many fewer words to children as a parent, the words that you have to use are the directive ones, so it's sort of like, do this, don't do that, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's what Melanie's referring to.
And so we teach them how to open up dialogue, and how to share experiences, and how to create a system in the family where children feel empowered, that they have a critical role. Their voices can be heard. They can give their opinions. They can start expressing emotions. One of the limitations in my childhood, which is why I'm probably so drawn to this, is I had a very limited emotional literacy or emotional vocabulary. So we really work with parents to understand the nuances of feelings, and we help children to understand that and then be able to verbalize that. Yeah.
That's so good. I mean, that's so needed.
It is. And it seems so obvious, but when you realize how limited most of us are, how limited our socialization was to connect in a way that's safe, this is powerful. I'm so grateful to be able to do this work, especially with Kate, because I've also learned so much from her and her expertise with children and development.
Wow. How does technology play in? I mean, in terms of we're in a different place than we were 10 or 15 years ago.
Yes.
How does that impact what the work you guys do?
We talk about this a lot. Kate and I, with another colleague, Sarah Shawesh, we started a consulting practice called BRIC, Building Resilience in Communities and Kids, because there is really a deficit in our communities. But we talk heavily and have done some podcasts on the role of technology. From the implementation of the Resilient Family Program, technology was amazing. I mean, being able to still stay engaged with parents through Zoom was a godsend.
Yeah.
But if you're asking more broadly about technology and the impact on relationships and on children's brain development and well-being, that's a complicated topic. But Kate, I know you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be careful not to villainize all technology, because there is some technology that's actually can be really good for children and teach them things. And we certainly know, for example, from Sesame Street, in the early Sesame Street days, that was really beneficial for a lot of the children that were watching it.
Mr. Rogers, don't forget about Mr. Rogers.
That's right.
And Mr. Rogers,
That's
absolutely. Absolutely. So there is certainly some programming. There are some, apps and computer games and TV shows that can be really beneficial for children. Certainly, we need to think about limits. We need to think about the time spent on those. And then also parents. I mean, adults are really quick to criticize children for being, on their phones or watching TV too much or whatever, while they're also simultaneously doing the exact same thing.
Right.
So, I mean, that technology it's so attractive. It really, our brains love it. It's like immediate feedback and addiction. Yeah, exactly. And so we have to be mindful as adults to not let that technology get in the way of our ability to build relationships. And to think about for children, really, it tends to be more about the opportunity cost. So if they're on technology all the time, what are they not doing? How are they not engaging in active play or not engaging in communication or moving their bodies and that sort of thing? So for me, that's more of the problem. It's not that it's bad necessarily. It's just thinking about the time spent doing that versus doing other things, just observing the world, for example. So we have to be mindful of that, certainly, and to know that, and we don't want to make parents feel too guilty about allowing their kids to engage in technology sometimes. I mean, it certainly is helpful when one has to cook dinner or get things done, to allow kids to do that. But just to think about it and be mindful of how much it is and what are the qualities of the programming that they're watching or interacting with, because there's certainly a difference, in terms of concepts and such styles and things like that make a difference in brain development.
Yeah, no, well, that and part of the answer I think on that one is, as I think about it, at least, is kind of like, gosh, what's the impact? I don't know if we know yet. Like this is like, I mean, it's been. No, we don't know. Yeah.
And I think that to ask the question, is the technology that we have going to impact brain development? Yes.
We know
just
that.
Like, we think of the word technology to mean electronics, but really any tool that we use as humans is technology. And if you think about sort of the earliest days of the printing press, for example, that technology changed the way our brains function. So every technology changes the way humans function. It's just up to us to make sure that it doesn't change too drastically in one way. That's sort of the role of the older generation, is to keep those new things in check. a little bit. But will it change things? Yeah. Some for the better, some for the worse, right?
Right.
Just depends on sort of what you're looking at.
Right.
Right. We don't know. The jury's still out on some of those things.
And obviously, technology is not going away.
Right.
So we talk with our parents, and I remind myself this also, that it's a tool to also bond with our children. So I try to use it with my 17-year-old. I sit down with him. We watch like a Netflix on his phone or TV together, the TV together. And I try to step into his reality, watch what he's watching, even if I'm not interested in it.
Right.
That's my job. But we ask parents to really pay attention to patterns that are being created. Or is technology or being on the phone a deterrent now from taking time to really build quality time with your child? And that's a lot of work.
Yeah, right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, technology does facilitate my my bonding with my son because of fantasy football. So there's that.
Yes.
You know, hey,
Yes.
there's a positive. Well, you guys, we're out of time. This is amazing work that you guys are doing. I'm so impressed and thankful. I mean, the importance of what you're doing with young people, and then not only the people you're serving, but then of course the impact that has on the students, and then being able to send out students who are thinking this way, who have eyes to see kind of what's going on in these with young people and so forth. Is there's a ripple effect there that you probably will never even know about the full impact of the work. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. You too, for sharing our story, but also, some of our family stories and our student stories.
Yeah, well, it's great. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.